My name is Nma Dhahir. I'm originally from Kurdistan, Iraq, but I was studying my undergraduate studies in Lebanon, and I did a semester abroad in Michigan State University in 2023. And I believe I was part of the ASP&E program, which was only one semester in Michigan, and it was my first time in the US. So I did spend my whole time traveling and studying, but mostly traveling the US. And I did one of the things that my parents told me not to do, which was go outside and explore the world by myself. My parents did not really want me to go to Lebanon at first because when I first moved, it was part of where the explosion happened. Just it was a few months after the port of Lebanon exploded. I went in a very bad timing. However, I feel like this time had made everything for me, which is like a miracle. I got into Michigan State. I'm still connected to Michigan State, like friends, people I met in Michigan. So I'm really thankful for everything that I had. And this initiative that I did was, it's very recent. It's only three to 4 months that happened, and it's in memory of my cousin named Sana and her sister called Sanaria and their family, which is like my uncle and my aunt. And it's very personal and it's very painful. However, I believe it's a very necessary thing to talk about because the cases here in Kurdistan are on the rise. Domestic violence is skyrocketing everywhere. So, with further ado, I'll start the presentation, and if any other question or something comes up, I'm gonna talk about it throughout. So thank you so much for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, anywhere you're in the world. Before I begin, I wanted to say this presentation was not easy for me to prepare. It's very personal and it's very painful, but I do believe it's very necessary to talk about. And today I'm not just here to speak, but I'm here to grieve, to remember, and to break a silence that has gone far too long. And I'm telling a story which is not from a book, not from the news, but it's from my own life. It's a story of love, of courage, of loss, and most importantly, of systematic failure. But it's also a story of resilience and resistance. So mine is not a product. However, mine is something that I wanted to change in my community. And there was a house in Erbil that no one visits anymore. And this is not because the house is haunted, but because the house that once brought it to life, the people and everyone that's there are gone now. And it's not by accident, it's not by time, but because of something else, something far more deliberate. That house, like many others, was full of light, of warmth, and of family. It was a quiet, ordinary night, just like any other week, and it was during Ramadan, where the kind of night where my family, this family, everyone in our family goes to that house. We're sitting, like eating, and this was just a few hours before my mom and my sister had left that house. And I'm still in Lebanon, keeping that in mind. I did not know about it, like they just said we were visiting family, so I did not really have anything in my mind. I was just saying it's a home, the safest place in house, or at least it should have been the very safest place. And inside that house sat this family, along with my own mother and sister. And the Dr. Sana is the one that is at the very like at the end, and Dr. Sanari on the other end. They were both doctors, and the others on top are my aunt and my uncle. And her parents that night were moving rooms. We're talking about Eid. What are they gonna do? Plans. What are they gonna travel to Lebanon, come visit for my graduation? But outside that house, someone else was also planning. And that planning it was not something anyone expected. I was not there, but I have replayed every second of that scene in my head probably 1,000 times. I've pictured every step, every breath, every second before the moment that happened. And it was the evening of March 13, 2025. Dr. Sana had just recently revisited her home. She had left her own house and went to her parents' house, but it was not as a guest and not to celebrate, but she went to escape. She had gone for to the living room just to rest after dinner. And without a knock, without anything, the guy stormed into the house. It was not a stranger, but it was Dr. Sana's husband, also a doctor, very well known in our city. And but that time, this guy did not come to talk, not to reconcile, and not to take her home. He came with a gun, and within 3 minutes, it was over. Four people were shot dead, executed in their own house with no mercy and no hesitation. There were around 64 bullets that was scattered around the house, like on like my cousins, my aunts, and like just throughout the house. But he did not only kill one woman, which was his wife, but he killed her entire support system. And why? Because she wanted a divorce, because she found that he secretly had an affair, because she confronted him, and because she refused to be silent this time. And she had finally chosen herself after nearly a year. For that, she was punished, and for that, he came for her and her entire support system, everyone who stood by her. And this is not only a murder, this is an erasure. And this story is personal because Sana, as I said, was my cousin. Dr. Sanaria was also my cousin. Kamal and Sabahat were my aunt and my uncle. And I'm not here standing to talk about statistics only, which I will in a bit. But I'm here because my last trip to here to home, it was to bury people that I loved because I had stood inside the house of a wreckage of a wreckage that used to be a house, used to be a place that I would go to visit family to tell them how much I loved to see them and how I'm waiting for them to come to Lebanon to celebrate my 4 year of graduation, and it never happened. And this is why I started this project is I refuse to let their story end in silence. And Dr. Sana didn't just die because of one bad man. She died because of everything failed her. Because she did everything the society told her to do. She got the education, she served her community, she served her country, she raised a family, and she lived with dignity. And yet, at the end, she was silent. It's not just the family's tragedy, but it's a tragedy of the truth, of culture, of law, and of all the cracks in my society that let that happen. What happened to Dr. Sana and her family did not just begin with violence, it began with permission. Not explicit, not spoken, but something that was deeply understood. Starting young, boys here are taught that they are not only the future of the house, but they are the house, the center, the provider, the protector, and the punisher. This isn't just about individuals' behavior. It is a core belief system. It's a blueprint of masculinity that's built inside every family here. And if a woman challenges anything with that blueprint, it's like she has broken the rules of the entire system, the rules and the cultures of a society. And the punishment sometimes here becomes not only explicit, but it becomes justified, just like now. But it also does not stop at home, because even when a woman escapes her abuser, she does not escape the system that we live in. She runs into another trap, which is the informal laws that live but control everything outside the courthouses. It's tribalism, customs, and honor. And so the law may not kill her, but it definitely delivers her back to the man who will. And we call this the informal justice, the constitutional justice. Even though Dr. Sana's case was an entire outlier here because her family supported her to leave, the murderer still came after her and killed not only just her, but the entire family. And when a woman finally reached the courthouse, where she brings her bruises, her fears, her voice, she meets the third layer of trap, which is the institutional protection of violence. This is the most chilling layer, honestly, because here the violence is no longer just tolerated, but it's legalized. Still active today, still enforced, Article 41, which is on the left of the two pages, which is the Article 41 of Iraqi Penal Code number 111, states there is no crime if the act is committed while exercising legal law. And what counts as a legal law here? The punishment of a wife by her husband within the limits prescribed by law or by custom. In February 2022, Iraqi Federal Supreme Court rejected an appeal by the Iraqi Women League to declare Article 41 unconstitutional. The court maintained that such discipline is indeed and as a reform, not as domestic violence, but found no constitutional background to invalidate the article. I want everyone to let that sink. just let us sink in, because when I read that this article is still in force and is still active here, even though Kurdistan has our own government, we're totally different from the Iraqi government, but the Iraqi government still has their laws towards us, and this article still applies for here as well. This article does not even like define what punishment means. And customs, where we say like it's prescribed within law or by custom in a patriarchal society can mean anything. But on the other hand, we have Article 14 of the Constitutions of Iraq, passed in 2005, where it calls that all Iraqis are equal before law without discrimination based on gender, race, ethnicity, and on and on. So, which law do we believe in here in Kurdistan? The one that protects women or the one that permits their discipline? These laws do contradict each other. And this is how violence hides in plain sight. This is how you get away with murder. You call it discipline, you wrap it in tradition, and you sign it into law. Now let's take a quick look into the facts, because Dr. Sana was not the only woman that was killed because of that. But even the facts that are stated here do not show the whole truth. Because what is published on the internet or by newsletters or anything in Kurdistan and Iraq, this is only the surface. I spoke to a lawyer that worked on my cousin's case, and while digging into other cases on us, and not only Dr. Sana's, I found that she said that she's going to reassure me every lawyer that I will talk to during like April up until whenever this case ends, they're going to tell me the same thing, that the real numbers are much, much higher. For instance, in only one city, which is where I'm from Koya, there's nearly 200 cases of domestic violence ending in death or not that are recorded per 2 3 months, which no one talks about. There's no news outlets that talk about this. There's no article that talk about this. And you wonder, like, why would this happen? This is because the government does not always tell the whole truth. The government don't tell the whole stories. Some cases never make it to the police stations, and some are just labeled as suicide or settled quietly through tribal deals, family pressure, and most importantly, through shame. They use shame every time when something like this happens. They're like, don't do this. This is gonna ruin our family's shame. We want to have any shame left within the country, within the city. And until now, if we don't call this three layers all together, the core, the custom, and the code, women will keep getting murdered here, and in Kurdistan as well as in Iraq. And when we talk about domestic violence, part of all of this, there's one question that I heard a lot, because this was part of my civic engagement project. And everyone asked me, why didn't she just leave earlier? Why did she stay this long? Was it a family problem that occurred, or was just like she couldn't just forgive him? But escaping domestic violence is not like walking out of the room or just running bare, but I feel like it is running barefoot in a minefield while being blindfolded, while being told it is your fault, and while being told and wondering if anyone would ever believe you in what you're saying. And like through all of these questions that I heard, I just wanted to ask something through everyone that asked me these questions. I wanted to ask, if when a man enters a house, when he comes and slaughters four people, a woman that does everything right, and she still ends up in a coffin, what do we do? Do we just light candles in front of their door? Do we write headlines? Do we wish just for a change? No, I do believe we need to write laws, or in this case, in Iraq's case, we need to redefine law, but not the kind that just passes without empty promises. In 2019, in the United States, they passed the Caesar Act, named after a Syrian photographer who risked his life to expose the images of tortured victims. Once the world saw these photos, it could no longer look away from the horror. The Caesar Act was not just symbolic. It imposed sanctions, it named criminals, and this is exactly what we need right here. Not for history books, but for Kurdistan, for Dr. Sana, and for the next woman who's trying to leave. Now, you may be wondering, why is the here? Now you may be wondering, why is there a goddess behind me in this picture? And this is because before borders, before Iraq, before parliaments, before penal code, before anything we had in this country, we had Ishtar, the Mesopotamian goddess of love, of war, of justice, and of protection. She was the goddess of power. She was our symbol, and I still believe she's our symbol now. Because we're not just fighting for justice, but we're trying to restore it. And we don't need hashtags like the ones they hear me say, just open an Instagram page and raise awareness about it. I don't want this. I don't want a memorial. I do want a shield. I don't want a moment. I do want a movement. And that movement, I called it the Sana Act, a promise and a symbol of resilience, of resistance, of reform, and of rebirth. On the right is a picture of Dr. Sana, and on the left is the image of Ishtar, the goddess of power. And I was told before to start going to parliament, do a protest before the parliament, talk about it, which when I was not here, they definitely did. All the doctors in Kurdistan, they stopped working for 2 days to talk about Dr. Sana's case and Dr. Sanaria's case because they both hard board, and one was an OBGYN and the other one was a radiologist. However, these cases are still not about, they're not talked about as much and as enough here in Kurdistan because they're not even shown on TV because they say if you do show stuff like this and people are gonna say the guy who killed them was a doctor, a well-known, a well-educated person, how would you expect someone that does not have this knowledge, this information, not do the same thing? Why would you show this? Because of the blood, of the house that's seen, of the 4 people that's dead, of the gunfires or the gunshots still in the house. But I do believe the Sana Act is not just 4 letters, but it's 4 flames. It's 4 walls of protection that no woman should ever have to beg for. And I did make something similar of the Sana, which is 4 letters and 4 things, which are S, to secure the right to leave, and not to rescue, but to leave. And I wanted this to go through the emergency sanctions funded and managed by women, emergency exit teams that are trained that have trained female officers, and anonymous relocation program for high-risk women. When I did talk about this, I found out we have nothing of these in Iraq. We don't have any sanctions. We don't have nothing that would relocate women if they are in high risk from their house to somewhere else where no one knows about it. And for A, I want to abolish the legal permission of violence, like to tear out the Article 41 of the Penal Code. There should be no tolerance of violence in our law for domestic violence and domestic abuse. We need a comprehensive domestic violence law at the federal level that provides real protection for women, for children, for men, for whoever that lives in this country. And for N, I wanted to build a national survivor support system, which I'm working on right now with 2 foundations, which is survivors are not, they don't want to just leave where they are from, this hole that they think they're stuck, but I want them to have an idea of what they can rebuild. After they're leaving, I want them to rebuild because life will not just stop after them leaving the house. And I think this would include a free trauma therapy for survivors and for their children, legal aid to fight custody, divorce, and safety, and guaranteed employment pipeline for survivors. This is also something that I try to talk about a lot. However, every time I do, it's something that comes out as you can't talk about this here because this goes against our law, our federal law, our penal code. We have this, we have that. We can't talk about all of this. You shouldn't go on TV and tell me or tell the nation, stop violence. And for A, which is the last one, which is to assert the culture with truth. And this is the hardest that I've been trying so hard to get over with and to make it more public. It's to introduce anti-violence curriculum in public and private schools because we don't have that here. And it's something that I found really interesting was where I took an anthropology class because I did a minor in anthropology in AUB in Lebanon. And I did take a course of anthropology in Michigan State. And the first topic that I studied was anti-violence. How do we talk about anti-violence in school, private, public? anywhere around the world. And I did a case study of it was the PhD case of my own professor, where she talked about anti-violence in India and in Pakistan, if I'm not mistaken, where she went and gave them the curriculum. She made them into classes, into courses to integrate them in their classes, in their in their schools. And I wanted to bring something very similar to here. And the second point was to train police, community leaders, or anyone with power about domestic violence, about DV and about GBV, and to report the real stories and the real consequences of domestic violence. Because the numbers I just showed, like 2 slides before, they're not the whole truth. They're not everything that everyone wants to see. It's just to show that Kurdistan is under control, that domestic violence is not as high as it is here. And and the last point was the numbers that are not shown is because the government gets a lot of funding from NGOs to decrease domestic violence, but there's literally the least they're doing to decrease that numbers and to make the numbers smaller. And at the end, I want I want you to imagine if a woman, Dr. Sanaya, with so many degrees, so many titles, a voice, a family that stood by her, could not survive, what would happen to the ones that have none of that? And at the end, I want to make Sana become more than just a name. I want it to become a law, a shield and a revolution, and name it the Sana Act or Dr. Sana's Act. And these are the